Yeah. So as we mentioned, we're in the midst of the month of Adar. There are many people that right after Purim passes. So for some reason, the concept of Mar bin Besimcha, Mishenichnas Adar Mar bin Besimcha, is misplaced or even chas v'sholem forgotten. Why? Because we think that when we begin the month of Adar, that's when we're supposed to excel in our simcha. When we come to Purim, that's the peak, that's the climax of the simcha. So what happens afterwards? Afterwards, everything dissipates, chas v'sholem. Comes the Rebbe and tells us in a very clear manner that the Shulchan Aruch writes, and it's a very clear halacha, Misha nichnas Adar marbim b'simcha. From the time that we usher in the month of Adar, we go and we add in our joy, and this is from day to day and from hour to hour, from moment to moment, the entire month of Adar. So the Rebbe comes and stresses for us the following concept, that since we know that the highest peak of joy the whole year round is Purim, and now we're already after Purim, we're already going into Chof Aleph, the 21st of Adar. This commandment, this instruction that the halacha tells us that we have to increase in our joy is standing, and now we have to be even more joyous than we were on Purim, which seems to be a very challenging instruction, but we have to live up to it. How do we do this? Just as we were doing it at the beginning of Adar, we have to make sure, and the Rebbe says this very, very clearly, and we have to make sure that every day we utilize a certain amount of time to invest in joy. Joy is basically singing and dancing, and even if it's for a short amount of time, but to go and to bring about this escalation of happiness and the progress in our joy, the addition in our happiness and simcha, by doing things that bring joy, singing, dancing, listening to music, playing music for others. This is basically how we bring about happiness, how we bring about joy, and also telling people, sharing people with people, funny things, happy encounters. These are things that bring happiness and joy to each and every one of us. The following story that we have for tonight is a very interesting story. It has to do with a island in Mexico. Excuse me for looking up to the side. I have to remember the name of the island. I've never been there. Isla Mujeres. Isla Mujeres. Anyone know Spanish? I might be pronouncing it a bit wrong, but I even looked it up on the internet to make sure that I'm saying it right. Isla Mujeres. Apparently, it's like one of the most dream islands that tourists come from all over the world to enjoy the scenery, the water, the waves. And there is obviously a Chabad house there. And the shliach over there, Ben Shimon, Rabbi Yossi Ben Shimon, he works night and day in order to go and to see to it that he is catering to the spiritual and the material needs of the Jews that show up, that visit there. And among the Jews that come to visit are many Israelis, of course. That's the nature of an Israeli, to go into Latur et haaretz, to go and to tour the land. Now, in the Torah, it says touring the land is basically touring the land of Israel. According to what the Zohar says, in the time to come, immediately now, when the Rebbe is revealed, Mashiach comes, so the holiness of Israel is going to spread out to the entire world. So touring the world is basically the same concept of the mitzvah of touring the land. Okay, even if it's talking about the immediate future and it hasn't come yet, but this is a very famous adage and instruction from the Rebbeim, starting with the Tzemach Tzedek, that wherever a Jew is, that is a place where we make Eretz Yisrael, Machdo Eretz Yisrael, as it's stated in Yiddish. Make the land under your feet, wherever a Jew may be found, and it doesn't make a difference where in the world. From the North Pole to the South Pole, going, and the 127 countries of Achashverosh, make this place Eretz Yisrael. How? By studying Torah, by praying, by observing the mitzvahs, the commandments. This is basically sanctifying the land under our feet wherever we may be found. How much more so when we are actually literally in the Holy Land of Israel, in Eretz Yisrael. But in this, right, thank you for the thumbs up. That's what the Rebbe tells us, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch tells us. But in this island, Isla Mucharas, as we said, many Israelis that come to visit, and among them was an Israeli that came to visit with his wife from outside Mexico. And during the time that he was there at the Chabad house during Shabbos, so he enjoyed the Shabbos. And then Motzei Shabbos, him and his wife apparently had a very strong craving. They wanted to eat Motzei Shabbos pizza. Okay, it's a thing, let's say. And so, where do you get pizza in Isla Mucharas? So they didn't picture that they're going to be serving any pizza in the Chabad house, So they got into their car and they started to drive toward the city with the intention of purchasing pizza, however form or shape it comes, not necessarily under any kashrus supervision, unfortunately. As they're approaching the entrance into the city, so they come across a very challenging. Who is Rus Rachel? We have yet to see. A very challenging situation. They encounter the road being blocked. Now, it wasn't a roadblock, by the authorities or anything, but the garbage truck that was collecting the garbage Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos, it apparently blocked the road, and they're sitting and waiting in the traffic, and they're waiting and waiting and waiting. It's really like 15 minutes that they're waiting in the traffic to, with this taiva, to get into the city and to obtain their pizza. And then they say, whatever, we'll park the car here on the side, and we'll walk to the city. Well, who needs the car? We need the pizza. The fellow opens his door, and immediately as he opens his door, a chassid, who happens to be the shliach of the Chabad house, Rabbi Yossi ben Shimon, he drives by on his motorbike. That's the way you get around the traffic on the island. And as he passes, he says, "Oh, Shavua Tov." So the Israeli says, "Shavua Tov," and he asks him, "What are you doing here?" So he says, "Rabbi, you have to excuse us. It's Motzei Shabbos. It's Saturday night. We have a custom to eat pizza. We're on our way to the city to eat pizza. Believe me, as soon as we finish the pizza, we'll come back to the Chabad house and we'll continue to eat only kosher food." The shliach looks at them, and he gives them a real puzzled face, and he says, "So I really don't understand what's going on." So he says, "Why don't you understand?" He says, "Because right now at the Chabad house, they're serving pizza for Malava Malka. They are? No, you must be kidding. You just want us to turn around so that we'll eat kosher food at the Chabad house. They said, no, with all due sincerity, they're serving pizzas, hot, fresh pizzas at the Chabad house. So the guy said, okay, you know what? I'll take your word for it. They turn the car around, they get back to the Chabad house, and they see exactly what the shliach said. They're serving nice, fresh, hot pizzas at the Chabad house. At this point, the Israeli, he gives a bang on the table, and he says, in honor of this divine providence that we encountered, he is going to donate one of the most beautiful and modern pizza ovens. So that they'll have really, they'll be enabled in the Chabad house to go and to serve pizza, and they'll be able to do it from all their heart. Everyone was all excited, and then, and the shliach took it as a very pleasant announcement. And things continue to progress in the Chabad house in Isla Muharas. A few months later, they in the Chabad house they were looking into, and they had a very dear offer. They had an offer to go into purchase land and a building in order to go into to be the new venue of the Chabad house. The only problem is that they were missing $1.5 million. No, $1.5 million. What's $1.5 million? So he doesn't know what to do, and they tell him like this, that if he agrees to sign the contract, so he has to give $500,000 up front at the signing of the contract, and then you'll have more time later on to be able to go into to find the other $1 million. Okay, but he still has to find $500,000. He immediately sits down and he writes the Rebbe in the Igros Kodesh and the Rebbe's in the Rebbe's letters, and he receives an answer for a blessing of success for the purchase of the new building. And then he says, now I have to find, where am I going to scrape together the money? Okay, he's thinking, and then he says, wait a second, this Israeli, he just came back, and he's here again on the island. So he says, this has to be the way that I'm going to make the money. He says, I have to make $500,000. He's going to go and he's going to split it up to 3 very wealthy people, 3 very wealthy gvirim, and each one is going to give a third of the $500,000. Who is first on his list? This Israeli that donated the pizza oven. So he gets onto his motorbike. He travels to the address where this Israeli is staying with his wife, knocks on the door, and the Israeli receives him very hospitably, sits him down, and he says, listen, I'm sorry that I don't have a lot of time to sit down and to speak now. But the situation is as follows. I have a building and it's going to cost me $1.5 million that I have to give the $500,000 up front. You are going to be one of the 3 people on my list that's going to give me a third of the $500,000. The Israeli says, oh, slow down. Listen, whatever I gave in honor of the pizzas, the modern pizza oven, that I gave with all my heart. But to go and to give $100,000, that's not on my menu at the moment. That I'm not in the position to start going to giving out that type of money right now. Okay, so the shliach here's what he has to say, and he says, well, listen then. In this case, I have to ask you for your help. You have to help me out. You have to assist me. He says, I'll help you whatever I can. So he says, listen, when I wrote the Rebbe for a bracha, So one of the details, oh yeah, Rebbe Yaakov. One of the details that the Rebbe wrote in the letter is that I should contact Mr. Johnson. And this Mr. Johnson is going to be one of the major people that will be able to go and to enable me to put the money together. Now, I personally don't know any Mr. Johnson, but you're a businessman and you know the people on the island, because you're constantly in your business ventures. So tell me, help me, point out to me, make an encounter between me and a Mr. Johnson. Find him, please. Help me. The Israeli looks at the shliach and his eyes almost pop out of their sockets. He says, wait a second, is everything okay? I mean, if it's too difficult for you, so forget it. I'll keep on looking. He says, no, you don't understand. He says, explain. He says, you see, last night I was sitting with lawyers. And since I'm not a resident of Mexico, so I had to fill out paperwork in order to get a temporary residence. And when I told them that my name is so-and-so, an Israeli name, they said, no, listen, you have to have a handle name that's common amongst the Mexicans. Otherwise, the paperwork isn't going to go through. So they say, choose a name. So from all the names that I could have chosen, what name did I choose? Johnson. I chose last night to be Mr. Johnson. The guy said, Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence strikes again, and I don't know how it works, and I don't know how you work it, and how the Rebbe works it in the Igros Kodesh, but you came apparently to the right address, and there and then the person, this Israeli, he signed a check for $100,000, and Baruch Hashem, the shliach was able to go and to put together the other two wealthy people to put the $500,000 together to sign the contract. Now, when we're talking about divine providence, when we're talking about Hashgacha Pratis, the hand of Hashem running the world and putting all the pieces together, the entire story of Purim, as we learned last week and 2 weeks ago, one divine providence after the other. Even though we don't see Hashem's name in the Megillah, not even once, it is hidden. Hashem hides and conceals himself so that everything looks like it's being worked through the channels of nature. But here again and again, we encounter this concept of Hashgacha Pratis, of divine providence, and how the Rebbe guides us, each and every one of us, with no exceptions. When we ask for the Rebbe's advice, blessing and advice and instruction, he guides us exactly to where we have to go and whom we have to meet and the time and the place where we have to be in order to go and to follow up on the Hashgacha Pratis, on the shlichus that Hashem is sending each and every one of us to fulfill with our neshamas, with our souls. And it should be Hashem's will, Bezrat Hashem, that with all the divine providence, Hashem should bring about the greatest of all divine providence, the revelation of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach on a good and revealed basis, in a manner of happiness and joy of the heart, in a manner of peace and tranquility of the mind. And it should be, the main thing, it should be Teichef Umiyad, immediately, mamish, mamish, mamish. Yechi Adonenu, Morenu, V'Rabbeinu, Melech HaMoshiach, Le'olam Voed. Amen.